everybody. Thank you for joining in this webinar, which is the last session of a very important expert group that the Commission has convened. It's a mixed group with high quality academics, policymakers and practitioners. The idea was to have assignments that respond both to the academic rigor and your needs. We are not going to spend too much time presenting everybody. You have the names, you have all the information on the website. So I want to start by giving the floor to the Commission, Mrs. Eva Nussmüller, who is the head of unit. Eva, please, the floor is yours. We have very little time, so we'll all try to stick to our time schedule.
Thank you very much, and good morning from my side. I'm just acting head of unit until Catherine is back, but I'll do my best, or I'm doing my best, to fill the place in the meantime. Let me welcome all of you who are here in Brussels in this way too cold room. We'll try to fix this, and welcome everybody online as well. You're numerous online, which is great, because this is the idea of today, to present your work and discuss it with the wider S3 community. Let me start with thanking you, dear experts, for your excellent work throughout the last years, for enriching the discussions around smart specialization, for giving very valuable insights for key topics of developing and implementing smart specialization strategies, such as governance. How do you actually do this? Who do you need? Who needs to be involved? On administrative capacity, extremely important, will remain important. On experimentation, also very important. I think we need to keep being agile, everybody in the regions and us included, and the smart specialization tool also included. Thank you so much for all of that work. We're here today to give you the floor to present part of this, and so to disseminate it to the wider S3 audience, and also to speak about what insights your work brings to the future of smart specialization. And maybe I take a couple of minutes to say something about the future as we know it at the moment. And maybe there, it's good to say that how the smart specialization will, what tool it will be in the future and what nature it will have in the future, is now depending on, or will be framed, let's say like that, by the national and regional partnership programs. And even before I say something like that, let me say that the proposal for the NRRPPs need to be kind of read in the overall context of the MFF. What's the overall context is that in terms of content, we keep having the challenges that we used to have, but there are also emerging challenges that we need to address. So there's a big array of very pertinent challenges Europe is facing, a big demand on the budget overall, if you want. So if you add geopolitics and preparedness, enlargement, but big elements that we will deal with in the future MFF. But the MFF also wants to be more flexible, meaning that giving member states and regions more possibility to react on crisis. You followed cohesion policy in the current programming period, and you're well aware of how many times we amended regulations, how many times we amended programs, and it was an average of 7.5 times that the program was amended. So the idea is that in the future, let's be more agile, let's be more flexible with our programs. And third, about making it simpler, and the NRPP also tries to make things simpler by having less funds involved and programming this 14 funds at once. And I'm saying this because I think it's important, because what that means, if you trying to address 14 funds at once, is that obviously you're not keeping all the specifics of every single fund. That would be impossible. So I think if you'd read the proposals from the Commission, please read it with that in mind, and see for yourself if like the key elements of each policy, in our case it's regional policy, are still there. And we believe strongly yes. And there are many elements that I could say that are kept. There are also many new ones, but maybe most importantly for the setting today is that the strong focus on regions is kept. That was not always a given, and it's very important for our house, obviously, but also for the work that you are doing. That means that regions will still have, also, well, depending on the national setup, of course, read something like regional chapters that they can where they can lead in the management as well. So regions can be managing authorities. Regions can have a direct contact with the Commission. So that is kept. What is also kept, and not, I mean, there's plenty, partnership principle, multi-level governance. I'm not going into all of that. But what is also kept is smart specialization. And that's also not a given. And I think it proves that this tool has become extremely valuable, and we have a long track record that this actually delivers, because otherwise it wouldn't be there. There are many things that are also not there in this regulation. And you've said it in the work that you've been doing as well, that things like smart specialization being a strategy that goes beyond or that regions use the smart specialization strategies beyond the core R&I. In many regions, this is the core R&I strategy, but it is also a strategy that guides regions when it comes to SME policy or when it comes to digitalization. It's kept, to my view, also because it also delivers on key EU priorities. Obviously, what regions are doing is not disconnected from the overall world. Obviously, this is connected to the EU priorities, but it's good to see that smart specialization strategies take up priorities such as the STEP technologies already. And that's a good track record of smart specialization strategies being a tool to deliver on EU priorities. Obviously, the framework of the future will be different. And I think it is now the moment, and I'm looking forward to the discussions later on, to see how the smart specialization tool can contribute to this future. And what I mean with this is in how far, and this is, I mean, all of these are open questions, and I think it'd be good to have first exchanges now and then deepen these exchanges in the next year or two, not too long either. So we don't miss the train for the next period. But in how far can smart specialization program, smart specialization strategies help regions in or guiding them in their industrial policy? So I think it would be important to strengthen the concept even more, go beyond R&I, as regions already did in many cases, but to also position smart specialization strategies as a tool to deliver industrial policy. Can smart specialization strategies become something like a backbone for programming of regions in their national and regional partnership programs? Can it guide regions also in this new framework? And what does it need to be a tool that can really guide it? Meaning that we need to think a bit about the nature of these national and regional partnership programs, about that there will be about obviously investments, this we know very well. It will also be about reforms, some of the smart specialization strategies already had elements of reforms, but how can we possibly strengthen that? And also, and I think this is key, and I think there's a bit of work to do still, is the future will be investments based on milestones and targets, which means that we in the smart specialization world need to pick our brains and see what in the investments that we've been doing through smart specialization, how can we develop from this sensible milestones and targets to measure the work. This is evidence-based work that we need to be doing. It's based on experience that we already have now, and it must be based on, and this is where your experience as experts in the room, but also in the wider S3 community is so relevant. What has worked until now in terms of investments? Why has it worked and why hasn't it worked? And how can we measure that if we in the future pay based on targets and milestones? So I think there's sufficient questions to further discuss, sufficient elements that we can jointly develop. And I think with that, I would close from my side, and I would wish all of us a very enriching discussion. And the colleagues online, please participate if as much as possible. Raise your hands if you have questions or comments, and let's make this as interactive as possible in this setting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eva, for the introduction and for framing the discussion of today. I think that's you are raising quite important questions, and yeah, we have quite a lot to discuss today. We have planned for two sessions today. One will be to take stock a bit on the work that has been done by the expert group over the last 2 years and a half. We work with the experts on different topics, so we are going to present to you some of the takeaways about that work, and more importantly, after the coffee break, we move to looking forward and to address some of your questions, or at least trying to address some of the questions and participating to the reflection that you're initiating at DigiRegio about the future of smart specialization strategy. There will be a short wrap-up at the end of the meeting, and Ron Boschma will have the difficult task to wrap up. So let's see how you navigate throughout that challenge. I'm confident. And then we will close at 12:30. We are aiming to be on time at 12:30. So let's first discuss let's move on the first session and move for starting the discussion with the audience. You can use the chat to raise questions. You can also, after some presentation, raise hands, and we can give you the floor. We have some moderators online that will help us to moderate the discussion. But first, Lena Tsipouri will introduce a bit the session one on taking stock, summarizing the key elements, and then I will pass the floor to some of our experts. Please.
Thank you, Mathieu. It's very difficult to summarize in 10 minutes, but I will try to pass some general message and then give you a little bit of an overview of the papers and the topics that the group has developed. I think the most important thing is to tell you that the papers are a combination of academic documentation and some practical advice. So it's not this is what you should do and what you read in academic journals, but we have been trying to say how this can be done. And of course, this is always easier said than done. And we appreciate that when it comes to identifying what should I do in my region now, it's more difficult. But I think the main messages are first, that place-based policy pays off. There have been questions and worries about that, but the group has a unanimous position that place-based works. Now, this does not mean that it's a panacea, that it always works and there's nothing else to do there. It's sufficient all by itself. It needs to be well implemented, and that's crucial. And there, I think you can find implicitly or explicitly in all the papers a difference between the short-term versus long-term goals. And I think this is a trap everywhere. And it is about opportunities, but opportunities have a kind of cost at the beginning. So things pay off in the medium to the long run. And I think we have three key requirements for effectively designing and implementing S3. The first is robust planning. And this needs strong governance and strong skills, not only for the region and the managing authorities, but for the entire ecosystem. And if this is not the case, it creates a lot of frustration. We did our best, but the others did not cooperate. So one key message is make sure the whole system co-develops. The second is good practices. They are valuable enablers of transformational policy, but while we talk about transformation and change and everything, we know it's hard to operationalize it. Academics call it path dependence. Practitioners say we have to comply with the absorption rates. Please make some room to look for good practices and see what they can mean, which ones you can grasp as your own opportunities. And the third is complementary technologies, which we're going to discuss more about in the concrete messages from the group, because it is important to exploit regional strengths, but no region in the world, not even California, is autonomous and can create all the technologies needed by itself. But there are ways to do it. So let me give the summary of the 5 papers, and then the authors of each paper are going to make a better presentation of their insights and lead the discussion. The first, and that's not an order of importance, is governance and coordination. Governance is not just respecting rules, is not just saying, okay, we'll do what the Commission says we should do to get the money. Governance means to be proactive and, most importantly, to anticipate new trends. Eva already talked about new challenges. We all know there are new challenges, so rely on the past is insufficient. Occasionally, it's even dangerous. The second is capacity building. And by capacity building, we don't mean hire PhDs only. Hiring PhDs, I mean, we have many PhDs in the group, is good, but it's absolutely insufficient. By capacity building, we mean create institutional capacities. Make sure institutions can deliver what they are supposed to deliver, overlapping mandates, remaining dependent on external experts. External experts are good. I mean, we're doing this job. We're happy to do it. But institutions need to have their own capacities to be able to guide through change. The third is experimentation. Again, not path dependence, not what we have done best in the past, we do it again, or what we have done, even if it was not good in the past, we replicate it because we know it. We need to embrace change to learn from others. One part of it is synergies. A lot of discussions have been made during the whole programming period, current one and the past one, about coordinating opportunities from the European Commission, so R&D support, Horizon Europe, all the framework programs, and regional development, but also between national and regional funding and EU funding. We need to address barriers, the famous silos, and seize the obvious opportunities. We don't need to make something very complicated. There are opportunities there, and they are obvious if you try to look at them and find them. And the final point is interregional cooperation, where the message of the group is to build on solid evidence of complementarities. This means do not promote interregional cooperation because the Commission gives some financial incentives, but do it because you know that whatever offers best opportunities in terms of technological cooperation is good for you. Don't go for the money, don't go for the technologies that you need and you do not dispose of. So that is an overview of what the group has done until now. And I think each topic is going to be discussed one by one.
Thanks, Lena. Indeed, Alexandre, you work with Alexandre Almeida, you work with Carolina Lipinska and Antonio Novo on the question about governance, coordination, and capacity building. Can you give us a bit of the, I would say, the key takeaways that you extracted from the papers that we discussed in the group over two, three meetings I think it was last year?
Sure. Thank you. Good morning. Everybody. We do have an echo, so you can have the chance of listening me twice. Which is also
You should turn off your camera, your mic, sorry.
They can hear it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So basically, I would start with motivation. And I will be discussing governance in the context of increased uncertainty and extreme volatility. We don't even know who our reliable partners are anymore. The importance of governance is even greater. When you're looking at smart specialization, you are looking at devising a transformational pathway that, given the pressure, needs to become a highway. We need to be focused on faster, agile, and more impact-driven governance. It's not only the strategy, but governance itself, because the governance is key to somehow transform the strategy in actions and making them real in the territories. So without that, it's impossible to actually drive strategy through. And this is a key challenge for all of us in Europe, being able to be more consistent with our promises and our planning, and beyond robust planning, we're having a robust implementation that is impact-driven. And this creates significant challenges in terms of governance. Not only you have a big challenge of somehow managing and creating some kind of social pact that involves everybody, that creates the foundations of anticipation, of entrepreneurial discovery, on continuous involvement of people in designing the strategy and its implementation. It also creates four types of key challenges, especially on the governance framework itself. I would highlight commitment and mandate, which is not always clear. We must see smart specialization not just as an exercise of compliance, of being able to use the RDF layer, but as a valuable tool that can guide us and inspire us to introduce these changes. And this means that institutions and political commitment needs to be there. Otherwise, it will always be a feeble implementation. This is also connected with a second point, because when you're looking at the smart specialization, the strategy that encompasses multi-dimensions, this means that the policy mix needs to be controlled and adjusted accordingly. This means that we need to have a full-fledged battery of tools that can support us in terms of the implementation. This means that we need to have the plasticity and the modularity of adapting these policy tools in order to actually deliver the strategy into the agents and creating the foundation conditions in order to actually thrive. I would highlight the importance of regional levels. Smart specialization is place-based. This implies, of course, a multi-level governance, an articulation between the EU level, the national level, and the regional and local levels. It needs to board everybody, but it needs to be clear and targeted. The more distance it goes from the territory, the less targeted it can be, and so it loses capacity. And I would finally highlight the importance of polycentric governance. Considering our institutional framework across Europe, we need to find ways of bridging institutions, governmental institutions, breaking boundaries, administrative boundaries, in order to be able to coordinate in a timely fashion, in a timely, consistent fashion, all policy tools to deliver results. Basically, we need to embrace that governance is also about changing our everyday processes, which is hard, it's complicated. I've been a public servant for many years, and this is something that is challenging. But as the British say, it's not enough to do just talk the talk. We need to walk the walk, and this means more agile implementation and agile governance frameworks. On capacity building, which was the second policy brief we had the chance to work on, this adds a second level because of what I mentioned before, this uncertainty, the speeding up of technology cycles, etc. This adds complexity to the competences and capabilities that institutions need to have to actually be able to anticipate, to design and devise foresight exercises, and be able to adjust the policies to what is needed and to these changes. So we live in a very demanding scenario for institutions where they need to be very flexible, they need to mutate, they need to evolve and transform themselves continuously, which is almost contradicting to the rigidity of normal frameworks of public institutions. But this is a key issue to tackle. Without proper governance and proper capacity, it's not possible to drive smart specialization or any other policy that aims to transform, not just to have a small leap of improvement. And what we need is transformation. And so this also demands three key topics in terms of capacity building. We need to provide institutions more capabilities in terms of policy design, how to design tools and manage policy tools that are flexible, that are plastic, they can be molded towards different topics that go beyond compliance and allow for experimentation. How can we integrate the idea of managing these transformational leaps in these institutions? Because we are asking institutions to go beyond their usual mandate and to envision the future and to proactively create that future. And this is quite strenuously for governance, especially when we are all dealing with everyday tasks that need to be complied with. And so designing and creating the future, doing this pathway of transformation is usually and unfortunately our last priority. And this needs to become our first priority. And finally, I would highlight the importance of monitoring, evaluating, and learning. If you are not balancing the effect of the policies, if you are doing monitoring to comply, not to transform, if you are evaluating to audit, not to improve, and if you are learning simply to comply better, you will not be creating the continuous learning opportunity in institutions that is crucial for the institutions to evolve alongside with the ecosystem. And this is one of the key issues regarding capacity building. So good governance implies change, significant change, but also building capacity building in our institutions. And I'll close with one final remark. We live in a severe and aggravating institutional crisis. There is an increased divide in citizens and disbelief of citizens in many regions and many countries regarding their institutions. This is due to many factors, but also to our need to revamp these institutions and modernize in order for them to respond faster, better, and also communicate with citizens. And this is the key topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Just a question for you, and if you can address in very shortly before passing the floor
In 10 seconds, please.
to Dominique, how can good governance models remain consistent in light of changing mandates and politics and continue remaining cooperative?
I think this is a very interesting question because one of the key solutions is that we should focus on nurturing institutions rather than the political level. The political levels change, and we live in an era of great uncertainty and volatility inclusively in terms of the stability of the political cycles. So we have been having elections in many countries on a regular basis, and a much more regular than foreseen in the constitutions. We have many very big divides in different parliaments, so blockades in terms of legislation, capacity to act. So institutions become even more relevant because they are the backbone of action. In the end, if the institutions are good, the country will keep on working, the regions will keep on working independently of the policy cycles. And of course that we need to provide a stability level for these institutions to operate. I think that the most important aspect is that we need to be time consistent with policy. We cannot be changing everything every time. We need to have a common drive across Europe, and we need to act. It's very important to focus on act. People are expecting us to deliver more, to do better. And we need to do it in order to involve them and include them in this social pact of transforming Europe. This is key.
Thanks, Alex. Dominique Fauré, you have worked with the group on experimentation, and I think it's to a certain extent linked to capacity building. And no experimentation with some capacity within institutions. Can you give us a bit of insight about the key findings, the key messages that you shared with the expert group and that we capture in the policy brief that we get out from that one? Thanks.
Thank you, Mathieu. So because Alexandre talked 10 minutes, I have negative time now. You know. Catch up. Thank you, Alexandre.
So you are done.
No. Yeah. Okay, two insights about, you know, our collective policy progress and also one limitation. So the first progress I have really observed in experimentation is really how regions design our priorities, which combine vertical and horizontal interventions. We started the smart specialization being very vertical, actually, and now it changed. Of course, horizontal actions are essential. You know, human capital, competencies, general ecosystem are key and needs to be done. But of course, we know also, and that's really the essence of S3, that regional advantages do not depend only on generic criteria that many regions have actually, which mean that, you know, highly educated workforce or good infrastructures are not guarantee for, you know, region-specific advantages. And so there is a need for combining these horizontal structures and progress with specific capabilities, which create every region as a unique place for some sets of industries. And I think regions have very well understood that, and now that this idea of combining vertical and horizontal interventions is really something which is going to stay, and it's very important. And the second big progress I observed, and I like it very much, there are many others like EDP, etc., but I want to highlight this idea that S3 showed its capacity to pull sectors which were notoriously not innovative in the innovation economy. And that's really new, actually, because most policies are pushing more resources in the high tech. S3 can do that when priorities are related to complex technologies, but also S3 can pull non-innovative sectors in innovation, tourism, social sectors, culture, healthcare. These are sectors which are non-high tech, low R&D, low productivity sectors where usually innovation doesn't happen. And actually, if priorities are selected for example, tourism or healthcare, then EDP is happening and an innovation agenda is built. And I think this is a key achievement. Why? Because these are sectors which are hard to advance, and as such take a greater share of regional GDP, which means that regional GDP and future progress of regions depends less and less on the super innovative sector of the region, because price decrease in this sector and GDP's share of these sectors is decreasing, even if quantity rise. And so the future of the regions depends more and more on sectors which are hard to advance. And actually, it is important to advance these sectors, which are usually outside of innovation policy. And I think S3, and we see that in many, many regions, have succeeded in that. And finally, so to progress and missing element, and Eva said it already, actually, this is about monitoring. Alexandre said it. Also, all regions have some barometers, have some indicators to monitor progress, execution, etc. But this, we are still missing, you know, a robust multi-tier monitoring system, which could be used by national authorities, regional authorities, and by the Commission to oversee whether S3 funded projects are making good progress and to initiate also timely correction. So two insights about progress, one limitations. This is my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominique. We have one hand raised in the chat and one question in the chat. So we are coming back to the governance discussion first. One question is the question about national governance versus regional governance in smart specialization. And the question is, what is the most efficient system for S3 to develop as proposed by the expert between national governance of S3 and regional governance of S3? I don't know if you may have some comments on that point, Carolina or Alexandre.
Yes, this is a good question that Jacek raised because I think in big countries, we already had a discussion during one of our meetings. The big countries like Poland, they have both national smart specialization and regional smart specialization. And observing it from the regional point of view, there is a lot of duplication of work. And I would organize the matters and the rules differently next programming period. Because actually from the national point of view, there is different concentration on priorities. However, the country is the regions. So the regions are building the smart specializations priorities on their own strength. So I don't know if there is the most efficient system, but definitely the system we have now is not efficient, unfortunately. Because the work could be used differently and the money spent also. A lot of reports, experts who are organized and in a national level, they are not exactly seeing the regional point of view. And also from the regional point of view, we are always saying that the country is not seeing our strengths. So I would suggest to change it in the future. Maybe I'm not sure because we have from yesterday we have very big discussion about the territory-based and industry-based smart specialization, but from because I changed the work now for the business. I worked 24 years at the regional level, but in my opinion, more priorities according to raise the EU competitiveness should be put on the national levels.
Thank you, Carolina, for that comment. Maybe one question from Jacek Walendowski from DG Regio. I don't know if you can hear us, Jacek. You have raised, so I give you the floor. So maybe that's a mistake, and so that's a fake hands raised. Maybe we can continue the tour of our different experts. Christina Jokelainen, you have worked on the question of synergies between different EU funding instruments, and notably Horizon Europe and ERDF funding in the context of smart specialization strategy. Can you give a bit of your 2 cents on the questions and the key conclusions that you provided for the experts and that we discussed?
Thank you very much. Yes, this is the very interesting point, because actually when we think about here the beginning speech from the DG Regio, what about the future? So I believe that the synergies will be even more important in the future, and we really should see ourselves as the smart specialization as a tool which is actually binding the regions into the national level strategies, but also in the European level strategies. So the importance of that strategy, we should totally see a different way. It's not just about the European Regional Development Fund and the specific priority 1. it's beyond that one. And what we actually would like to highlight is that the smart specialization strategies actually create the foundation and will act as a bridge connecting, first of all, at the regional level, the regional ecosystem actors to play in the bigger arena together and to support the implementation of the smart specialization strategy. Is it the regional or national one? And then it will also connecting the European regional innovation ecosystem. And we should really see it more like finding the complementarities and see how we can learn from each other. Because after all, when it was also said that we should support at the big level the European competitiveness, we have to support European industrial value chains to become competitive and connected. And it can be done only by interregional collaborations and interregional emphasis. And synergies are the one of the tools to put that into the practice. And then it goes to the funding programs to create synergies and complementarities, exactly. So we have to learn to use and see out from our own regional box in that case, that how the linkages. And if you also read, for example, the current Horizon Europe 25-27, it's emphasizing very, very strongly how to find these complementarities. And we actually should learn to take it seriously and see that also from the regional perspective point of view. But that also means then that we have to engage when there is smart specialization strategy planning and implementation into the practice. It's not just the management authority doing their work and giving money out, but it should be the joint planning in the regional context, and the regional ecosystem actors have to take their own role, not just applying the fund and then just applying the fund from the Horizon Europe or any other programs, but really to see that how their work will actually contribute in the implementation of this specific smart specialization. And that means then that when you are prioritizing the investment in the regional context, it has to be done and together. But also the smart specialization can be the way how we can create the inclusive engagement of relevant stakeholders and to take care of that part of as well. And then that way to force the stronger regional innovation ecosystems to develop. So what I have seen as a bigger weakness in many, many places is that the synergies are not actually seen as a tool when you think about implementing smart specialization into the practice or developing the financial roadmap. The strategy itself is not enough, and the strategy is supposed to guide the use of different resources, human resources, but financial resources as well. So it has to be done, and it should be the real financial roadmap what should be developed, which is actually emphasizing of better use of different resources. But at the same time, it should not be the goal itself. It has to be, it has to provide, and it should provide the added value, the regional, national, and whole European competitiveness, and seen as a very important starting point for that one. But then in the reality, if you think about the management authorities are putting strategies into practice by giving the funds out from the structural funds. But then in order to engage these other funds, it needs the active regional intermediaries. We really should focus on that who are the core players in our regional ecosystem. In some cases, clusters are the core players. Clusters are actually integrating most efficiently us with the industrial policies and the industrial value chains. And those should be seen as enabled tools to put things into practice. But we should also see already the big European initiative like European Digital Innovation Hubs. In some countries, it has been very successful and it's really playing a very crucial role. When other member states, they haven't really realized how big enablers they could be and actually reaching the whole national level into this game. Or then smart specialization partnerships or other partnerships which have been established during the last years and already being the forum for natural interregional collaboration, engaging different actors, clusters, universities, vocational education, development agencies, regional authorities, and so on. that's my highlights, what we agreed together with my colleague Antonio. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. I have one question from the audience for you. To what extent the S3 focus on region-specific priorities, instruments, limit the capacity of innovation to expand from region A to region B, and to what extent synergies across EU funds can help to widespread innovation from one regions to other regions?
Okay, I will start from the European Regional Development Fund. And if you look this first priority, Smart Europe, it's actually mentioned there that one of the actions what should be supported under the framework of smart specialization is to support and enable this bridging. And actually to be the guide. And then we have examples, excellent examples how it has been done in some of the member states and the regions, for example, in Catalonia, my colleague nearby, and others, that how it has been being the starting point. And then, of course, we also have a situation that other regions get more funds than the other from the structural funds. So it's not that easy, but it's how to use that as a beginning is the core. But then it's also that how to activate the regional stakeholders on existing networks. And then what I want to say, research, development, innovation community should actually also realize the role, what they are playing in this, because they have all the capacity and the best expertise in case the other programs like Horizon Europe. Why not once think about the Horizon Europe project as a way that, okay, what added value it will provide to my region where we are placed at and where we are working at.
I think that you mentioned in your speech, for instance, the i3 instrument as a way to create synergies. There are some reaction about i3 instrument and the requirements for having work programs or having a bit more directionality and so on. So I
didn't mention i3, and that's my mistake. Yes, i3, I believe it's the philosophy behind of that is excellent. But there are some setbacks what should be openly discussed between the regions because, but it's excellent tool, and I think that kind of tool should be more put into practice and the same, because that really helps to strategize and to find the collaboration arenas between different less developed transition regions and developed regions. And now when we are following that development during the years when it was first announced, I think it was like 5 or 8 applications only submitted in the first call. And now it's like really booming and regions are really using that after learning. And that's a good example of that when there are lessons learned and the good practices have been developed, it should be supported further and make it stronger, because that is really the tool enabling the collaboration as well.
Thank you, Christina. I'm conscious of the time. Maybe Ron Boschma, you have worked on the last paper that we discussed at the last meeting on interregional collaboration together with your colleagues Simona Yamarino and Agnieszka Olenchenka. Can you give a bit of insights on interregional collaboration? I think that's quite interesting piece of work that you have done based on evidence, and I think it has generated a lot of discussion within the expert group, but also with the Commission.
Yeah, thank you. Of course, I'm very pleased to present that. Of course, it is a major challenge to incorporate the role of interregional collaborations. Already, Christina was already saying a bit on that. And I also observe that I also see there's a lot of enthusiasm in the regions, and but at the same time I also see that they struggle how to incorporate that, right? So everybody would agree that collaboration is a good thing. You tap into knowledge that is not available in your own region, and you really need to do that because I don't recall who exactly said that this morning, is that even in Silicon Valley, you have to connect to the outside world because they might not have all the capabilities to excel in the priorities they have set themselves. So it's absolutely important, and it's also very encouraging to see that in the last program or in the current programming period, there has been a lot of attention to the role of interregional collaboration and how to, because it might really provide opportunities for place-based policies. Having said that, there's also a lot of literature actually saying that interregional collaboration is not really taking that off in Europe in the sense that many countries or many regions tend to collaborate inside their own regions or at best with other regions inside their own country, but not so much internationally. So there's a will to win there. And I think smart specialization policy can really contribute to that. Also, how to incorporate the role of interregional collaboration, of course, is a challenge. There have been some instruments made available right now. And indeed, we see increasing enthusiasm among players inside the regions. But still, the resources are still quite limited. I think in that sense, much more could be done about that. But it's also important, and that is probably one of the crucial ingredients that we looked upon in our own paper, is that it is just not a matter of collaborating. And I think also Lena said that you can give all incentives to collaborate with other regions. But the big question is, with whom should you collaborate? And where should you tap knowledge? And then the concept of complementarities we have explored can be extremely useful in order to identify with what partners in Europe you could actually collaborate, given the priorities that you have set. So it does not necessarily mean that you just have to collaborate or that you have to collaborate a lot with many. You have to observe and identify for each activity which partner regions you should connect to, and that differs from activity to activity. And this is very much connected to place-based policy, the philosophy of place-based policy, which is about setting priorities, but it also means setting priorities in the type of collaborations you are going to develop with other regions, and that is super important. And as I said, there's a lot to win there. Because what we observe in our empirical analysis, that complementarities that are available elsewhere in Europe are not fully exploited. So we have to inform policymakers, we have to provide a tool in order to inform them, because that could be very useful for them to see to what extent and with whom they should connect in other regions in Europe. And that, to me, is really also what Europe is all about, right? It's about integration. It's about encouraging international collaborations between regions. And here, a place-based policy, a smart specialization policy, can offer that, and it's very much in line with that philosophy. So in that sense, we really see that this is an important step to take and to incorporate better the role of interregional linkages in smart specialization strategies.
Thanks. A question from the audience is about coming back on the question about the I3 instrument, which is one of the main instruments right now to encourage and incentivize interregional collaborations on innovation. To what extent right now the I3 instrument is quite a broad instrument without putting any emphasis on very specific sectors, industrial branches about digital, green, manufacturing. And the question is to what extent the I3 instrument should be a bit more focused on some priorities, some sectors, and so on, with the development of work program, for instance, with I would say some similarities with the Horizon Europe program, etc. So how to keep the balance between space-based innovation approach in inter-regional collaboration, where regions can play as they want depending on the local conditions, and a top-down approach to build inter-regional collaboration in critical technologies or critical industrial sectors with a more top-down approach.
I'm not so sure whether that's a top-down approach, right? So, I mean, what is really key of smart specialization policy is that you should involve local stakeholders in order to make those decisions. So also connecting to the outside world means and using this innovation instrument means that a local player should be in the lead. So it's not a top-down model. It should be a bottom-up process. But what we can do is we can inform policymakers to or local stakeholders to make better decisions in that respect, in order with whom they should connect and with whom they should select, because we can offer them tools to identify complementarities that are elsewhere in Europe. To some extent, they might already know that, but to some extent, they might be unaware of that because nobody has full information. Such a tool can, I think, be a very important strategy to help local stakeholders to make their own decisions. So it's not top-down.
Antonio, you want to react on that, or maybe to add?
I can comment. It was said at the beginning of the webinar though, that the next period we need to align the S3 strategies with the competitive business funds and the need for reinforce our industry. So it's something that we need to really deep think about it during the coming period and reinforce. And the role of intermediaries and the bottom-up approach, I would say it's critical, but it is, in my opinion, is not well solved up to now. So, and I3 instrument and other instrument that could reinforce us the linkage between the S3 strategies with the investments and the creation of inter-regional networks will be critical, absolutely.
Thank you, Antonio. I think it's the right time to make a short break. We have in the agenda 10-minute break, so I invite you to join the second session on the future.
Sorry, there is a very important question in the chat,
Yes.
which I think we could give the floor to someone to say, okay, I mean, we may come back to that when we go into the future, but monitoring and evaluation were mentioned several times as a key factor for a successful smart specialization strategy. What region could be mentioned here as a best practice for other regions to look to? I think we will discuss it internally during the break. I would go for Catalonia, but there are more regions, and let's have a good coffee before we respond to this question. We started the forward-looking ideas.
So we start again at 11:15 right on time. So thank you for your attendance, and let's have a discussion on the future of smart specialization. Thank you.
For free.
Hello, everybody. We are starting again that discussion of the expert group with the second live session on the future of smart specialization. We have had a bit of problem with our microphone in the room, but normally it should be fixed now. Maybe before starting the discussion with the member of the group, I will let Lena Tsipouri planting the scene and trying to summarize what are the key trends and challenges that require indeed a reflection on the future of smart specialization strategy. So please, Lena, if you can introduce a bit our discussion. Thanks.
Thank you, Mathieu. Before Okay, can you hear me now? So there was a question about good monitoring and evaluation systems. We discussed that. It was clear that there are very few good practices, and the two best practices we identified are indeed Catalonia and Emilia-Romagna. There are more which are in the middle of the way, but if you really want to take a look for the future challenges, see what they did over time. It takes time to build a good monitoring and evaluation system. It's not something you decide today and it's ready in 5 months. But you can build it up. It doesn't take decades. It takes time. More than that, it takes conviction. So let me very quickly say a few things. Eva already mentioned the challenges from the point of view of the Commission. We have discussed the challenges from the point of view of the group. The first challenge is what the OECD and more international organizations and academics now call the geography of discontent. And this is not only Europe. All over the world, we have a rapid growth of GDP internationally, but many regions and people are constantly felt left behind. And this is very, very bad for many reasons. And I think this has to be addressed with smart specialization policies. I think the Letta report called something like the freedom to stay. And I think this is important. This has not been heard in the past in so many words. We know the European Union as the freedom of goods and services to circulate without barriers, the freedom of people, the freedom of everything. But there was no freedom to stay in our villages, in our less developed regions. And this has to be incorporated into place-based policies. The second, and we already discussed that partly in the first session, is the resurgence of industrial policy. So place-based policies does not mean that we forget about productivity gaps. Draghi report, Letta report, all newer industrial policy papers from the Commission speak about productivity and innovation. This should and can be coupled with regional development policies. The third emerging challenge, unfortunately, is the security challenges and its regional impact. So pandemics, wars, and security concerns have very uneven regional impacts. And I think this is something the older generation to which I belong, we didn't think this would happen in our time. We believed Europe is a safe place. We haven't seen war between 1945 and 2020, so we took it for granted. Unfortunately, it's not. And if you have war producing weapons, for instance, it's something that's unevenly distributed. And I don't know, Ron, how much it can go into interregional collaboration, but wars have very uneven regional impacts. And then there is the geography of critical technologies. And I think what Dominique said before the break is very important. You know, we have AI, we have quantum computer, we have advanced materials, and there is a danger in these technologies where the marginal cost of production is very high, but the marginal cost is zero and the marginal benefit is very high. Well, do we go towards an economy where winner takes it all? And in terms of AI and quantum computer, winner takes it all hints towards United States and China, not Europe. But on the other hand, maybe regions can exploit critical technologies in the areas which were originally not the innovation drivers. And this is also an emerging challenge. And last but not least, I'm not going to say anything more because you've said enough about it. It's the engagement in strategic collaborations. And maybe there Europe can play a role, can make the steps towards the direction of creating enabling conditions for really strategic collaboration. And there are probably a lot more future challenges and emerging challenges. So we would like to have a lively discussion now rather than a presentation from our side. Thank you.
Thank you, Lena. Maybe a first reaction from Antonio Novo about how do you see the future of smart specialization, and how do you see notably the synergies between smart specialization, industrial policy, and how to combine the both approaches? Thank you, Antonio.
Thank you. It was about the deputy head of unit at the beginning. Okay, we need to focus and discuss how smart specialization strategies will support and reinforce the competitiveness fund and the new funding schemes at the European level. And I think that this is a discussion for the next period. It was mentioned not so long, 1-2 years in the future, that should take challenge on how are we approaching the engagement of the S3 with the intermediaries and the industry, how are S3 supporting real investments, and how are we using this tool for creating what Europe needs, that is very strong industrial hubs with a high capacity for competitiveness at global level, not only between regions or not only between member states. And I think this is one of the big challenges that we as the cluster community and the industrial community will be extremely interested in supporting. How are we going to make a difference and not only promote small examples of some investment in new technologies, but real impact at global level. And I think that we need to deepen I would say, or extend the instruments like I3, but others. We need to design and extend the instruments that will enable this stronger linkage between smart strategies and industrial development, competitiveness development.
Thank you, Antonio. Thank you, Antonio. Jose, I think that you wanted also to react a bit on that approach, and maybe you can add or complement with your perspective, please.
With pleasure, and I don't want to repeat what has already been said today, but maybe using a little bit some reflections from the OECD point of view. I think the first element that we've been pushing for quite some years is to make regional policy as a structural policy. I think we shouldn't forget the importance that it can have on the competitiveness agenda. Reports like the Draghi, they talk about productivity, but I think there needs to be some more elements on the importance of place when you think about competitiveness. Just to give you some idea and some data, We calculated, for example, the growth contributions in the US, and about 70% of the US growth comes just from 20 functional urban areas. You take away New York and Los Angeles, so you have 18 functional urban areas between the sizes of 2 million and 8 million. That's where the bulk of the growth comes. It's not aspatial in the US, it's very geographically localized. So I think greater push towards this competitiveness agenda and how place is critical. I think that's the first concern that I wanted to highlight. We shouldn't forget that. Second, we already discussed the industrial policy. And just today, there's a big event in London talking about industrial policy is back. A lot of countries are thinking about reindustrializing, whether that's chemical sectors, whether that's raw materials, or any other element, security. But some of the top research on industrial policy, like Andy Roderick, they're talking about industry policy 2.0. And when you think about what are the elements in industry policy 2.0, there are elements that are very similar to smart specialization. So I think this offers us a very, very interesting opportunity to link smart specialization with this new discussion on industrial policy. This is something that I think is very, very critical, because that's where the debate will be in the future. And I don't think it's very much different if you start to think about what this industry policy 2.0, it talks about experimentation, it talks about broader objectives between manufacturing, it talks about inclusive governance and institutional capacity, the sorts of elements that we've been discussing at the beginning. And just my final point on reflections, there's been sort of like a criticism in the past to say that place-based policies have been too atomized, been too trying to meet everybody's goals. So there's a need to re-centralize with the priorities of the EU and national priorities, which makes sense, but we shouldn't forget what Ron mentioned before. We cannot take the pendulum all the way to this re-centralization, because if you lose the connection with the local stakeholders, with this bottom-up and endogenous methods of growth, we know that doesn't work. We know that that doesn't work. So these are three important messages that I would like to convey moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. I'm pretty. Yeah, it's building on your last point, Jose. I think that's I don't. Sorry. Yeah, you're right. Sorry, I didn't put on my mic. So just to mention that there is one remark in the chat that is building on your last point, mentioning that S3 should still focus on the competitive advantage of the region. So keeping the balance is quite strategic in that evolving context. But Tatiana, please go ahead with your comments.
Thank you, Mati. I will continue with what Jose said, because I think that smart specialization strategies are more necessary than ever. And I want to clearly reaffirm the key role of regions in smart specialization strategies. Because if we want to make real progress on the green and digital transitions, if we want to strengthen Europe's autonomy and reduce the growing gaps between regions, we need to get better at connecting the biggest strategies with what's really happening on the ground. And that's where smart specialization strategies play a key role, because they can turn EU priorities into meaningful action. But this can only happen if we see smart specialization strategies as place-based strategies for transformation, not just as sources for funding. So S3 shouldn't be about funding activities only, but they should be about embracing complexity, working across silos, aligning efforts, and building the institutional capacities to lead the transformation we urgently need in health, in mobility, in food, in industrial systems, in energy, in the revitalization of our rural areas. And looking ahead, for me, S3 should become platforms that empower regional and local actors to take coordinated action and to align public and private investments to contribute to EU objectives. Because if we are serious about building a competitiveness model in the European Union, a competitiveness model that is sustainable, resilient, and just, then we need more effective ways of dealing with complexity and driving systems change. And that's exactly what S3 are all about. And regions have here a key role to play. That's what I would say. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I will continue because many things were said today, and I'm sure we all agree. And I'm also happy that Eva confirmed that S3 will be a backbone of the policy, innovation cohesion policy somehow. But I have some thoughts that because we have also a different meaning of S3, even if we discussing among the experts. And the other aspect is that we are speaking about the policy that that has 15 years. So it was totally, raised in a totally different framework, political, economic framework. And what we observe in Poland, for example, probably you have the same in your countries, is that S3 is parallel to the real business that is raised. There are two ways. Sometimes they are touching each other, but usually not. And I think when I dream about the future of the S3, I think the S3 should make more strength to this industries, especially strong industries in the EU, the hubs that Antonio mentioned, also the previous comments. Because what testifies that we are competitive today as a European Union, we know that we are maybe that would be a controversial what I'm saying right now, but I see that is less innovation, but more access to the resources, human capital, of course, the rare materials, you agree probably with me, but also the energy independence and resilience. But not only economic, not only energy, but also connected with medicines, with food, yes. This is the life how we have a war over our close to Poland, so we really touch those problems very often. And security and defense, which is also an important area that should technologies be involved in it and dual use. But second thing I see after also Eva introduction is, and I'm great that it will be developed, the S3 strategies, probably a new one, a new model, somehow on our experiences, but definitely what we need is a new spirit, because the S3 policy is like a religion, and people have to believe in it, because otherwise they will not do it, because it was 15 years ago that we believed in the S3 and we did it. And we had some results. If we would like to make it again, we have to make a new spirit. We need leaders in the regions, also in the countries. What I said about the top-down approach, I'm from the region, but what I see is that we need to make a priorities at the national level, and then regions should help to raise it, to develop it, not because otherwise they are two separate policies, national and regional, especially in big countries. In Poland, really, it doesn't work, and I'm totally confused of that. Concluding, also what wasn't said but is very important: talents and education. This is really something that was always in the kitchen if we are speaking about the S3. But this is nowadays the really important thing, because without young people, we will not build the competitiveness, we will not have innovation and R&D. So I would put more emphasis to education, awareness, especially awareness, and this new spirit, because otherwise we will have the
dispersion of resources, financial capital, and the fragmentarization of the processes.
I think that the question about the debate. Quite a number of questions. First questions is about, okay, can we afford to develop both an industrial policy together with a place-based approach at the same time? First question. Then second question, as some regions have more capacities, have more, I would say, develop innovation ecosystem, does this mean that S3 becomes a strategy only for developed regions with more complex and competitive ecosystems? What are your responses to that? Do you share those risks? What's your feeling about those questions? Maybe Dominique, you wanted to react on that?
Yes, thank you, Mathieu. Actually, let me first observe that, there's now a new priority about competitiveness, make that we are back to the early S3, actually, because the first S3 ideas were really about, how regions are building competitive advantages.
Dominique,
sound.
You're
Okay.
It's okay? It's okay. Okay, so I said that now with this competitiveness new priority, we are really back to the early S3, which was really about how regions can build competitive advantages. And still, this idea of having horizontal interventions plus some kind of vertical specific capabilities, I think, is intact. Now, in the new world where we are, I think that we really have to manage these two kind of policy, some kind of more centralized and top-down policies in sectors where we have agglomeration economies, scale economies, indivisibilities, space technology, defense, aeronautics, etc., where we need a few world-class clusters in Europe, and this has to be managed actually in the sort of general EU policy. This is one idea. But the other idea is we still mean decentralized policy, distributed capabilities for many sectors where we need innovation and transformations, and that should be done at regional level. So I think the two centralized and decentralized policies needs to be managed. And I don't see any case where S3 should just a strategy for developed regions, because any regions has sectors to be transformed, to be improved, and that should be at regional level. And as I said, a key consequence of this is that pulling sectors which are not really innovative to the innovation, and that's really important for regional GDP future progress. Again, we need central industrial policy and decentralized S3.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Dominique. Maybe I suggest to move to another topics or challenges that has been mentioned by Didier Regio at the start of the day, which is the link to the introduction into the cohesion policy program management, to disbursement linked to targeted policy reform, which is a kind of inspiration from the recovery and resilience fund. So basically moving from a cost-based approach to a performance-based funding models. And I think here the question is, what does it mean for smart specialization strategy? What are the policy reforms that we could link to the smart specialization to condition the disbursement of funding? We did not yet started to discuss this within our group of experts, but maybe it would be interesting to hear from your perspective about that topic, because I'm pretty sure that it is quite a hot topic within the managing authorities to how to figure out this. Tatiana, you want to start with that, please?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I'm unmuted. I think that the key issue is what we want to achieve with smart specialization strategies, because as we say today, they are about processes. We need experimentation, we need to build capacities, we need to learn different ways of dealing with the complex challenges that we have ahead. We know that we had in the past maybe work in another world. The world we are living now is different. The challenges are huge. So we need some space for experimentation, for testing. It's about how we mobilize resources from all actors. It's not national or regional or local. It's not about developed regions or regions in development. We need to mobilize all the resources we can. And we talk about processes and transformative processes. Let's be careful with the kind of performance indicators we are choosing, because experimentation is about processes, not results. When you are experimenting, you cannot promise the things you are going to deliver. So if we put the focus on results, the consequences will be regions will be very conservative, and they are not going to use smart specializations to explore new possible pathways. And this is what happened in the current period. The focus is on delivering results. So all regions are very conservative, and they are not using smart specialization for transformation, for capacity building, and for exploring new pathways. And this is where we need to find an equilibrium, because of course it's public money and you need to monitor what you spend the money, but be careful and put all the focus on results, because then you will have the contrary effect that you are saying you want to achieve. Yeah, thank you.
You see clearly a risk in doing so. Is there a different view about that? Any advantages to that solution, or again, some risk that you perceive? Dominique, you wanted to?
Mute. Okay, so I think, I mean, innovation policy is usually paying for inputs, right? With subsidies, grants, etc., etc. Then we have something like paying for compliance, which is like an administrative step. And now paying for performance is very difficult and different logic. Actually, this is already implemented in some policy ideas like Michael Kremer, but this is implemented when the output, the performance is easy to be defined and to be measured, actually, like, you know, a new vaccine, you know, it's easy then to pay for the output. And here, paying for performance involves being able to define performance in S3. And this is particularly difficult because S3 is a complex process, and public investments is an important element in the regional progress, but only one among many. And so then my idea would be to first, you know, having ex ante definition of performance criteria, but this should be very much decentralized. So it should be done by regions, and regions should establish, or each region should establish explicit cost, productivity, innovation, any kind of targets, actually, ex ante, and then share this with the Commission, with national authorities, and this would allow outcome to be evaluated against a benchmark, actually. So I think we need to have this centralized process to establish performance criteria, which then could be shared to the Commission, etc., for evaluation and against this kind of benchmark.
Thank you, Dominique. I see Alexandre willing to take the floor. So please go ahead, and then Renati.
Thank you, Mike. This is a very interesting question, because we need to change the focus of operational programs from compliance and the speed of disbursement. As of now, the key performance indicator that most regions use is how fast we spend the money, instead of how transformative is the way that we are spending the money. And sometimes this means that we need to shift to the way we evaluate. Again, the monitoring, the evaluation is crucial for every type of policy instrument, strategy, but also policy instrument. What Tatiana mentions is something that is important. We have more or less everyday instruments where it's easier to implement and approximate with milestones, but we also have experimentation that is urgently needed, and that one is harder to tackle with this type of monitoring solutions. But I think that something that is critical is to somehow have a qualitative evaluation of the changes that have been put in place within this type of frameworks. Because in the end, even when we are discussing this divide between industrial policy and smart specialization, in the end, a healthy innovation ecosystem has all types of agents, including industry. We have forgotten that. We think that we can survive only of services, and that is not true, especially when we are talking about innovation. We do need in the industry, and we do need a more balanced approach to this idea of developing smart specialization, developing innovation ecosystems. But going back to this major question, it is a significant shift if we go from the standard way of measuring performance in operational programs towards a more targeted approach. We should look for impacts. We just need to be careful that sometimes impacts will not be visible in the short run and are not compatible with the time frame of program. And this is a key challenge if we change for the milestone approach that's in the recovery and resilience programs have been implemented. I think it's an added value. It's an improvement in relation to the past. It will help refocusing this on on the pathway, not on the compliance and the standard indicators. But I think this is important. Also, a final note that I think, and I'll use a metaphor to demonstrate this with all the risks associated with that. If we take a blood sample of everybody in this room or in the webinar, and we compare it with the standard referentials, maybe we are all healthy, but in fact, our genetics is different. And so for some, the RN levels that appear healthy, because it's the average, mean that you are not healthy. So indicators mean some kind of careful analysis on how we do it. Because if we try to standardize, if we create this divide inclusively across regions, this is an issue. And a final remark, because this is a question I think from Richard Tufts on the divide between developed and less developed regions. I think that the only signature that is left as an identity for Europe is the fact that our perception of development is more complete than in other countries. We believe in social welfare. We believe in sustainability. We believe in economic welfare. The fact that we are not just focusing on economics or in a simple economics framework means that we need to have a much more complex take on what development is. And this is what supports the idea of cohesion, the idea of a healthy society across Europe. And this is why it is of utmost importance of not leaving anyone else behind. The idea of dividing Europe more and abandoning cohesion is a very dangerous one, because this means that in the end, the rest of EU will fragment, and in the end, it will be every man for itself. What made us different is that we built a union, a European Union, and we are building a joint undertaking that is much more powerful than we envision now, but it will take more time and more in-depth processes in order to produce results.
Thanks, Alex, for calling for protecting cohesion policy within Europe. I think that Lena, you wanted to add, and then Carolina will complement.
Yes, I think there is one very interesting challenge for the period ahead, which looks like being only technical, but it's not. And the challenge is what Dominique said, the difficulty to define performance. Performance is something intangible. It's very easy to define results in the sense, so many kilometers of road built. That's something you can easily measure. But measuring performance is very difficult. And
And the problem is that we do not have experience, neither at the academic level nor at the practical level. Because performance, because it is intangible, can mean anything. Performance can mean becoming more competitive. Now, how do you want to measure that? And so on. The limited experience we have in Europe comes from the RRF. The RRF had performance indicators, and I think that's a very mixed experience. When we first heard about the RRF funding member states, not regions, based on performance, it sounded very attractive, you know, rather than presenting an invoice and said, I spent 5 million, give me the 5 million back. We would say, I spent 5 million and achieved X, Y, Z. Please give me the money back. And that sounds challenging, but there are many challenges incorporated in this approach. One is optimism. We believe that we're going to make that. So the milestones and the performance measures are very high up, which creates a problem at the end of the period, because we all know RRF is going to have to give money back. Nobody likes to give money back. And on the one hand, people say, okay, the money was not spent because it was too much money at the same time. But many people involved in this exercise say we could not absorb the money because the performance criteria that were set up were over-optimistic, miscalculated, wrong. On the other hand, it's exactly what Tatiana mentioned before. The performance criteria may be too restrictive. If I'm not an optimist, if all I want to do is absorb the money, then the performance criteria are going to be very conservative. So if it's the definition of results that end up to be the performance criteria, then there's practically no progress. So just to conclude, if we had a question in the audience, as at the end of the previous session, what is the best practice in regions and member states about best practices in setting performance criteria, I'm afraid nobody would be able to give an honest response. We struggled to find best practices in evaluation and monitoring, and I don't think we have really best practices in setting up performance criteria, which means, and that's, I think, where we will be concluding, that we look at the academic community, we look at the Commission to work more on identifying criteria for performance-based approaches. We want to understand the theoretical background and the practical ways to transform them into S3 policy tools. And I'm sorry, this expert group does not have the solution to that, but I hope there will be a succeeding expert group. And this, I think, Vincent, I'm looking at you, should be the first topic to address by the new group.
Thank you, Lena, for that bold statement. Carolina, you wanted to add on that?
Make a dot to what Lena said, because actually I was thinking about what to do so to make new regions that are leaders in rankings, because usually when I observe regional rankings, there are regions from the old EU countries. So I'm sure that anybody who make a brilliant idea how to do it will take an award, the big prize. But what I wanted to conclude, because Richard asked also the education and skills matters, and I think this is, I mean, the systems we have in each country have different education systems, and it would be really very difficult to change it from the scratch. But it is really possible to do it. I did it in Pomorskie region. And definitely the universities should be involved in the S3, in the priorities, economic priorities, innovation priorities, as well as technical schools, secondary schools, because they are also the people who are working in the industries, engineers. And the last thing, what Tatiana said, to some thoughts I have after your speech, is that we should communicate everything what is said today to the regions, because they are really nowadays in a chaos. They they forgot a little bit about the S3 policies, and they are having short-term strategies, not connected with S3. So the communication, talent, and education awareness is very important. If you observe what happened when we had a blackout in Portugal, in Spain, there was a lot of fake news. So it is that we have really at the lowest level the awareness of people, how they should behave, what is going on actually in Europe, and the awareness of people and education is that it should be our priority, so that everybody knows what to do and how to behave, and if they see the fake news, they know it's not the real facts.
Thank you, Carolina. Ruslan, you wanted to build on that point on education, I guess.
Well, actually, I was taking back on the note on that was mentioned on the blackouts, and and also taking note from the fact that was mentioned several times, the industrial policies, the new ideas about competitiveness, and the common market idea of Enrico Letta, that we have kind of a 1-year anniversary kind of these days. And I was thinking that a lot of what was presented here in terms of ideas would come up maybe to kind of strengthening the cross-regional work that is being done, but maybe kind of putting more funding into that, so that different European regions that have similar smart specialization ideas could work together to bring common enforcement on different levels, like, for example, in energy, in financing, in banking, so that we could have this common European common market, kind of enforcement. That would help, I guess, and also give more enforcement capabilities to the regions, in a way, having these similar networks of 5-6 regions from across the EU, so that they face similar challenges, but also build together a common response in these areas. Just a thought as what the future might hold, bring more funding, more institutional capacities in that direction.
Is it just funding, or it is about setting up the right incentives to foster cross-regional collaboration? And in that case, for the future of smart specialization, what are the new incentives that we need to put in place to foster such collaboration across regions? Based on your paper, Ron, one of the key conclusions is that maybe regions are not collaborating with the right ones for different reasons, but how to create the right incentive, the right governance mechanism, what needs to be changed in the system to make sure that regions are collaborating for good reasons and to exploit the regional competitive advantage.
But Mathieu, sorry for interjecting, it is also funding. I mean, if we're thinking about defense and we're building up 5% of GDP in defense, how can we match China's or US massive overspending vis-a-vis the EU on cross-regional work? If we're not matching in any case. I mean, we're talking about the EU budget of what, 1.5% of GDP in 7 years' time. Well, this is peanuts even compared to the annual budgets of China and the US in that respect. So I would say we need to open an honest discussion about this too.
Very briefly on the defense spending, of course, it's about funding as well. But on the defense spending, one of the major problems of Europe, and this is not regional, is the fragmentation. So it opens up a different question, a lot more towards industrial policy than regional development policy. But there is a very good presentation in the parliament about the cost of fragmentation in defense policy. I think something like, in Europe, we have 25 kinds of pistols and whatever.
And armies.
And in the US, they have 3. So the question is not only how much funding, but how we create scale economies and standards.
Yeah, it's a different, but this is about Lina. Lina, when you identify the challenges for the future, I mean, you forgot about sustainability, actually, which is a bit usual now to forget about it, but this is regrettable because I think that S3 has been has a role to play. Actually, circularity. Many regions have circular economy targets, renewable energy, electrification, etc. And that's increased the efficiency through which natural resources are translated into new products and services. So that's very important. But again, now the next challenge is that it's not completely sustainable because this kind of efficiency cannot be increased infinitely. And so then the new phase of S3 or any kind of regional policy, this is to treat nature, natural capital, and nature is present in all regions, as a capital asset which needs to be managed as the other capital assets, and any regions is based on human capital, produced capital, and natural capital. Until now, natural capital was more treated as external to the strategy. It should be internalized, and that's involve new instruments, new trade-offs, and new mechanisms for local communities to benefit from this natural capital extension. And my visit to the East North Finland was really clear on this, and probably some countries where nature is everywhere are leading this trend, which is really a big challenge for the future of S3.
I would like to add something to what Dominic said, because I completely agree with that. And we have some very good examples of rural areas that are using circular bioeconomy as a driver for the triple transition in industry, food, and energy. And this is key because of this natural capital, rural regions have a very important role to play, and it's a key opportunity for them to generate new opportunities, to generate new value chains, but the most important thing is that they take ownership of these transformation processes, and that the key issue is who captures the value. And a smart specialization strategy, this place-based strategy, should ensure that these rural regions are able to capture the value of this transformation. This is very, very, very important.
Yeah, actually, we have evidence about the,
You are muted.
We have evidence about the fact that demand elasticity of tourism is increasing with, the expansion of protected areas and, the management of natural resources. So that's really an economic problem.
Always.
Yeah.
Always economic problem.
Maybe before. Of today, I wanted to build on one critical question that has been raised in the chat. I'm not sure that, of course, we are capable to address that questions. I think it's more an open question and a question for Didier Regio. But the question is really about questioning to what extent the S3 can be embedded into a new industrial policy when the S3 concept is still challenged in some member states and including within European Commission services. So that's often a question about how can it be really integrated and how it can work if, I would say, within the institution it's not well grounded. Antonio, you want to react on that comment, I guess?
Yeah. Dominic mentioned before, no, that it was important to combine the bottom-up or regional approach also with the national approaches and the European strategies. I fully agree, but perhaps we could use interregional collaboration or innovation valleys or I3 projects to really create those strong hubs that we need. That doesn't need to be located only in one region, but we need a clear focus and real, I would say, investment, or not just 5 million euros dedicated to one new technology. It's nothing compared with China or USA. We need a real tool to make big investments through interregional collaboration. I think could be one of the answers.
Yeah, of course, many topics were tackled, and I would like to follow up on interregional collaboration, which is very important. It is crucial because the complementarities are not fully exploited among regions. And as Ron said, but it is not an easy task, especially for those regions which are not well experienced, but also because there is lack of capacity within regions to collaborate, and they are reluctant to experiment also with that because it needs resources. And here I can see the big role of universities, as it was mentioned in some questions in the chat. Because this is the role of universities also to inform policymakers, to make the data available, to prepare some easy available data sources to make the policymakers more conscious and more informed about the complementarities which are present and which are not traditionally taken. So different directions of collaborations are there, but really we need to inform policymakers better and build their capacity to collaborate. And contacting more experienced actors with less experienced actors, it's not an easy task in any collaboration, but we really need it. And of course, I would like also to come back to security and security issue, because coming from Warsaw nowadays, it's really the most important topic. And of course, I can see that smart specialization should be connected with the defense, but more broadly with the resilience building of the regions, more broadly, and not only connected to the to be safe from drones coming to our airspace, but more broadly to the building resilience of communities in particular regions. So I would like to mention that. And of course, collaboration on defense sector can build our European value chains, of course, but we need to think about particular can be resilience in this kind of situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Agnieszka. Ron, you have been the chairman of the Aspect Group over the last year. So you have the difficult task to try to grasp some of the points that we covered this morning over the two sessions
1 minute
today. Can you give a bit? Can you give us a bit of your own reflection about the topics that we discussed about this morning before closing the discussion today?
Yeah, but my mic cannot be detected.
We be patient. We have a bit of technical issue, but Ron will.
But I guess you
can.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Exactly. All right. Okay. Yes, I'm unmuted. Okay. Good. To wrap up, okay, so that's a major challenge, right? So I will try to do my best, and I was told that I should do it within 3 minutes. So that's even more challenging. What I would like to emphasize is that there are a number of challenges that we have identified, I think, in this morning session. First of all, that what it appears to me is that not all regions have the same capacity to benefit from S3 policies, right? So the regions are very different, and some of them might be better equipped to embrace and fully exploit the potential that an S3 policy might give them as compared to other regions. So I think that will be my first observation. The second observation is that that we kind of like S3 policy and the philosophy behind it. It's a policy that have triggered a lot of efforts and initiatives in all types of regions throughout the European Union, thinking about where to go in the future, right? Developing a strategy, think about in what direction they want to go, and to make part local stakeholders in that whole process. So I think that it was already a major step forward in that respect. So the idea is very good. Also to think about that not anything goes, but that you really have to think, where are your strengths, where are your weaknesses, what type of capabilities are available to you, and that should also be reflected in smart specialization strategies. So it really made policymakers think about what competences, what capabilities they have, in what direction they might go in order to exploit that. Of course, this is not without many challenges, and I think most of the discussion this morning was about those challenges, right? And sometimes I had the feeling that, yeah, we are an expert group, and many of us are academics, and we are emphasizing a lot of challenges, right, in smart specialization strategies, without offering very concrete solutions, right? So and again, just let me name a few. One is how to set priorities, right? So we know and we have experience that some regions are much better in doing that than others. Sometimes they're very broadly defined. Also, how to incorporate the role of interregional linkages and how to exploit complementarities. I think we are only starting to think about that, and how to exploit that, and how to make that really part of smart specialization strategies. So not without challenges. Another issue that I think was very much discussed was the current emphasis on strong industrial policy, right? Following Draghi and others, although on the competitiveness report, and at the same time trying to integrate that with ideas on smart specialization policies. Now, Draghi, and if you read the report well, it's not about geography at all, right? So, so I like the invitation of Dominique that you say, okay, this is about all centralization, right? We have to create European champions, and Draghi is not even referring to capabilities. We just have to create European champions. Otherwise, we will lose out in the international competition with the US and China. But also, and this is also what Dominique stressed, is that also you have this decentralization process, which probably all those regions in those rural areas, they will contribute to something. They will contribute to their own well-being. When implementing smart specialization policy, they can contribute to the green transition, as we discussed, right? Because yes, I also noticed that in data and data analysis, that peripheral regions and rural areas are very well equipped to contribute to the green transition, right? So and I think we should embrace that, and that should be made part of smart specialization policy. Third observation that I made is that we were discussing a lot whether we should have a monitoring system, right, of S3, and whether and if so, how that might look like. And the first observation that I notice is that we say, hey, we are missing such a monitoring system. But at the same time, it also initiated a lot of debates about can we actually develop a monitoring system? Because first of all, then we need to know how to measure the performance of S3 strategies. Can we actually do that? And there were some critical views on that this morning about, first of all, those objectives that S3 policy is pursuing. Those are long-term strategies, right? If you, to me, it's always about creating structural change, and those might take many years, if not decades. So how can you ever evaluate that in the short run, right? So that is one thing. Also, like very much the intervention by Tatiana was actually saying, you know, if you really do that, develop this monitoring strategy, it might go against the nature of smart specialization strategy, which is about experimentation. And experimentation, by definition, is really hard to define that in terms of future outputs and what you would expect. So and indeed, if so, and if policymakers would be held accountable in that respect, they would go into a very conservative direction, not setting very ambitious priorities, because if they would do so, they would probably not deliver, and therefore, and if held accountable, they might not go into that direction. Other point that I noticed is I think that is probably the maybe the most solid. Well, maybe it is a personal opinion. It's about the need for institution building, right? So I think also through the whole the 2 years that we are together, we put a lot of emphasis on that, right? So probably most of the emphasis was on that, on the need to build capacity, institutional capacity. But here also challenges are some regions might have a better capacity to do that than others. We know that many regions might not have the appropriate institutions or might suffer from corruption, which makes it very hard to implement and build on this institution building process. Also, how to implement this institutional flexibility that also Eva was mentioning this morning, right? So we really want to go into a direction that there should be much more flexibility in the type of policies that we are going to develop. But that is easy to say. but how to do that in practice is not without challenges. Maybe a last comment, I'm probably already talking too long, is that it's about multi-level governance, right? So of course, the smart specialization strategy have always focused on at the sub-national scale, at the regional scale. First of all, stressing the entrepreneurial discovery process, involving local stakeholders, etc., etc. But regions, of course, are part of a world in which they're connected or not, and the context in which they operate is global, with all its challenges, right? Like the Ukraine war, like geopolitical tensions, like populism, etc., etc. The green transition, as also Dominique mentioned, they're all huge challenges. Also, the intervention by Carolina about who should take control. Should it be the nation state, right? And of course, we are moving into that direction, right? So the new programming period, of course, by looking at those national partnership programs that need to be developed, the nation state will be in charge. But at the same time, because we fully believe in a place-based approach, and it was also mentioned by José Enrique, should be made part and parcel of that. And I think we can't stress that too much, because we have to stress that again and again and again in all kinds of debates about future industrial policy in the European Union, that a large part of it should be place-based. Not all, but much of it makes absolutely sense to make that very place-based approach. So it means that you really have to think about what should be done at the country level, what should be done at the regional scale. But this is an old question, right? So I mean, when I was a student, I was already studying multi-level governance. I mean, it's an old topic. Where should you place the main authority and the major decision, and where taxation should be and spending can be made. These were some observations. I mean, hopefully probably I have not covered everything that was being discussed this morning, but I think the overall conclusion is there is a future for smart specialization policy. But it is not without major challenges that we all discussed. And in order to make the next steps, I think we should really confront these type of challenges and try to improve in that respect, so that we can also mean something to local policymakers that now, of course, always struggle how to implement and adopt smart specialization strategies.
What a must. Thank you, Ron. You are a master in wrapping up that meeting. Maybe before, for the audience, before closing, just to mention that in terms of next step, this afternoon we are going to discuss with the expert group, and that will be the base of a last policy brief, where we will wrap up a bit the recommendation from the expert group about the future of smart specialization. So that will be soon available on the S3COP website, normally end of September, early October. And just to also to mention that the S3 community of practice will continue. There will be a new phase that will enter into force relatively soon. So you will get news. And last but not least, I wanted also to thank all the members of that group. We have worked together quite well, I guess, over the last 2 years and a half, and it has been a pleasure to work with you and to share some insight with the audience today. So thank you, everyone, and congratulations. Thank you, everyone, and thanks for your attendance. See you soon. Bye.